సాయి ఫ్రిడ్జ్ మీద పెన్ ఉంది తీసుకో yellow కలర్ పెన్
I request all participants to kindly mute their mics.
I think 5:56 झाले. We should start the meeting.
Wait, hey, sir, I have joined just to let you know.
Hello. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hello. Sir. Yeah. Just waiting for another 2 minutes here.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I thought I'll let you know at least I joined.
Yeah. We have seen you. And we have muted all the participants and except you and me and Dr. Lakshman.
Yeah, that's better, sure.
So I think we will start. We'll start. Yeah, please. Sir. In 3 minutes we'll start.
Hello, Dr. Suraj. Welcome.
Hello. I can't see you. Where are you in the screen?
Yeah. I have switched off my webcam.
Oh, okay. Yes, now I see you.
Good.
Can you see me clearly?
Yeah. I can see. It looks like you're vacationing somewhere. Is it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm in Switzerland, at least virtually.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me now.
Can you see me, Dr. Suraj, Dr. Lakshman?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
మనస్విని ఏమైంది ఎందుకు అప్పుడు పిలుస్తున్నా
I request all students to mute their mics, please.
Participants 99. We have reached to 99 participants. Yes. He's live now, right? So very good evening to all of you. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Anil Pete, Associate Dean, School of Pharmacy and Technology Management, NMIMS University, Hyderabad. I hearty welcome to all the participants as well as today's guest speaker, Dr. Suraj Bansali, for our second Farm Talk webinar organized by School of Pharmacy and Technology Management, Hyderabad. This is a platform on where we bring experts, early career scientists and students all together on a virtual platform to discuss recent trends in pharmaceutical sciences. We are happy that so many have joined us this evening from all corners of India amidst COVID-19 lockdown. I sincerely hope all of you are safe and healthy wherever you are, and see to it you educate people around you, respect lockdown rules, and play an active part in this fight against COVID-19. To begin with, I will give you a small introduction of our school, and then I will introduce our speaker today, and from there on, the talk will ensue. Before we begin, few housekeeping announcements, just in case due to power cuts or any reason the streaming stops or goes irregular either at the beginning or middle of the talk, please do not panic. We will post the entire webinar immediately after the event for your convenience. Also, please note that we already rolled out participation certificate for first talk webinar held last Saturday, that is May 2nd. The related quiz link has been now disabled. Participants can get participation certificate for today's webinar by clearing online quiz, which would be active from May 11 to May 13th only. Those who clear the quiz will receive their certificates by May 16th. Also, please note that during this lockdown time, our team is working to bring you the content you want, and your fullest cooperation and patience will be highly appreciable. And we do sincerely regret any inconvenience caused to you during this time. Before we go into the main body of the event, I will show our presentation where I just want to introduce my school. All the participants are requested to mute their microphones. All the participants are requested to mute their microphones, please. This is sincere request. So, School of Pharmacy and Technology Management is working under the umbrella of Shri Vile Parle Kelavani Mandal, which was established in the year 1934, and Narsi Monge Institute of Management Studies was established in the year 1981. So this Narsi Monge Institute of Management Studies, one of the top 10 business school in the country, it was established in the year 1981, and this NMIMS got the Deep University status in 2003 by Government of India. Today, the NMIMS University is having more than 70,000 students studying at 8 different campuses and 17 different schools of NMIMS. NMIMS is NAAC accredited, that is 3.59 A+ grade, Tier 1 university in country. The School of Pharmacy and Technology Management, which is one of the constituent and important school of NMIMS, it was established in the year 2006 at Mumbai campus. The SPTM Shirpur was established in the year 2007, and our Hyderabad campus was established last year already. The various courses offered at our university, it is the BPharm, MPharm, DPharm, and PhD. However, our main course is BPharm plus MBA, which is integrated 5 years degree program, and we got NBA accreditation for our BPharm and MPharm program, and our school SPTM Mumbai is ranked 9th and 13th in the country as per the NIRF ranking 2018 and 2019 respectively. Hyderabad campus, NMIMS Hyderabad campus was established in the year 2010, and we are having 2 different campuses at Hyderabad. One is at Tarnaka, and other campuses there at Polipalli SEZ, which is 90 acres of campus. This campus, 90-acre campus, is having the School of Management, School of Pharmacy, School of Commerce, and School of Law, School of Engineering and Technology, and School of Science, which are going to start this year. The School of Business Management is the first B-school in Hyderabad to get international AMBA accreditation. At School of Pharmacy and Technology Management, So we started last year only at Hyderabad, but then we are, as far as our academics is concerned, we are providing all sort of quality education every week. We are calling the industry expert to teach our students. We are calling our alumni on weekly basis. Apart from the all the infrastructure and the academics, we are also having so many extracurricular activities. So if any of your relative or any of your friend, if is interested to join any program with us, especially the BPharm MBA program, only last 3 days are left to join for the NPAT examination, which is the entrance exam for our NMIMS. Dear friends, with this, I welcome our guest for today's talk, Dr. Suraj Bansali. I welcome Dr. Suraj. Dr. Bansali, I want to introduce Dr. Bansali. Dr. Bansali is the Global Head, Division of Clinical Pharmacology and Pharmacometrics at Accelera, and works on creating clinical trial outcomes, databases, and data analytics solutions to support drug discovery and clinical drug development with effective application of data science and analytics. Dr. Bansali completed his BPharm from University of Pune in 1999. He has earned Masters in Neuropharmacology from South Dakota State University, USA, and his PhD in Pharmaceutics from the University at Buffalo, USA, with emphasis on PKPD. Before joining Accelera, Dr. Bansali has worked at Novartis, New Jersey, where he was involved in clinical drug development, that is phase 1 to phase 4 of biologics and small molecules, including designing clinical pharmacology development strategies and leading modeling and simulation program. He provided critical input to regulatory documents, including INDs, NDAs, and BLAs. He has been a key contributor towards successful approval of Ilaris, tobramycin, and Quisqali. His research expertise includes clinical and preclinical development of biotherapeutics and pediatric drug development. He has extensively published more than 50 research publications, including original research and review article, conference proceedings, and book chapters. Dr. Bansali is an adjunct professor at the University of New England, Portland, ME, and served as a reviewer for various peer-reviewed journals. He is a recipient of numerous awards and recognition from the ACCP, AAPS, NBC, University of Buffalo, and Novartis Pharmaceuticals. With this brief introduction, I request Dr. Bansali to start his speech. I know that there are so many participants, most of the participants join here on Zoom app. However, there are n number of participants who are attending this event. More than 3,000 participants, they are attending our event live on YouTube. So I request all the participants, whatever their questions are, just put your questions in a chat box on the Zoom as well as on the YouTube. At the end of the lecture, we'll address, we request our guests to address all those questions. With this, I once again, I thank you, Dr. Suraj, and Dr. Suraj, over to you. I have stopped my screen sharing, Dr. Suraj, please.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Anil. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Anil or Dr. Puli, can you confirm if you can see my slides and you can hear me well?
Yes, sir. Thumbs up.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Very much. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So first of all, I mean, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Secondly, I really appreciate you guys working hard to make this happen, especially during this lockdown period. And I really thank all the audience. I mean, this is probably the biggest audience I have ever addressed so far. And this is the power of social media, and some of it can be attributed to data science actually. So once again, thank you. Like Dr. Anil has requested, I also want to request, please mute your audios, phones or videos, so that way it doesn't disturb others. Also, I noticed, I mean, some of you may know me and I may know some of you. I just happened to notice Dr. Varsha ma'am, who taught me some of the PKPD back during BFARM in Pune, is also in the audience. So good evening, ma'am. And there might be more, I don't know yet. Send me a message afterwards if you're there. So once again, privileged to be here talking to you. So thank you. Some disclaimers: I'm employed at Accelera. Previously, I was at Novartis in the USA. I hold stocks for the company. The views expressed here are that of mine and not of my former or current employer. So let's start with something, a cartoon I like. I mean, what is this? This is Oracles of Delphi. Give me a second. I need to connect my charger. Okay, we are good. This is the crystal ball and the tarot cards. So what's the common theme here? Thousands of years ago, people used to go to the oracles of Delphi. Even within last few hundreds, the crystal ball, and even as recent as now, actually, some people go to the astrologers or the tarot card reader. These parrots we see in some fairs. What is in common here? Basically, they are all trying to predict the future. Now, have they done that? I mean, I don't know, maybe hit or miss, maybe 50-50. But one might wonder, can you actually predict the future? And I know you are all muted, so you can't answer. I usually like it more interactive. Can we predict the future? Actually, yes, we are already predicting the future. How? With data science. Again, it's not a crystal ball or a tarot card or Oracle of Delphi from thousands of years ago, but we are using data science actually to predict the future. And we are already doing that. One may ask how? Well, we are already predicting the flight times or train times, or even if you use Ola or Uber or a GPS to get somewhere, we know ETA, or that ETA is also adjusted based on the traffic, based on the rain, or a number of different factors. So that is nothing but predicting the future, right? The arrival time gets adjusted accordingly. Same thing in financial, in supply chain, I mean, in aviation industry, everywhere, we are already using the data science to predict the future. And this is all possible with data science, right? So now with that being said, I mean, let me move to the brief outline of the talk in terms of introduction, history, scope of data science and analytics, applications in healthcare, which is what I assume most of the audience here is interested in, drug development and big data in pharma, preclinical, clinical development, and we'll go through one or two case studies. We'll adjust according to the time. So again, one of my interactive questions is how much data is being generated? For example, how many YouTube videos are there? I mean, if you can attend this call on Zoom or YouTube, I'm sure you know how to use YouTube or watch YouTube, right? And I'm sure we are all doing. How many YouTube videos are there? I mean, there is no clear-cut answer. There is no exact number. But the last I saw, there are too many. And just to give you a snapshot, actually, I mean, this is all digital media, Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and so on and so forth, credit card transactions, the bank transactions, many quintillions or zillions of different entries. So coming back to YouTube, it takes 60,000 years for one to watch all the YouTube videos. right? And nobody has that time. Even if someone watch all those videos in 60,000 years, guess what? There are so many more videos that will be generated in those 60,000 years. In one day, just one day, the number of data that gets uploaded in social media is equivalent to 100 years. It would take 100 years to watch that is being uploaded in one single day. Of course, it across the globe. So that's the overall, I would say, the breadth of data that is being generated, that is being hosted. Now coming back to data, what is data? I mean, we are talking about data science, right? Data is nothing but information that has been translated into a form that's efficient for storage, movement, and processing. That is the textbook definition of data. So there is categorical data, there is numerical data. I mean, these are the two basic types that we know. But within categorical, there is nominal and ordinal, and within numerical, there is discrete and continuous. So to put it in perspective, related to our field, I've been in pharma pretty much my whole life. So in pharma or healthcare or in medical terms, right, a nominal data, which falls under categorical, is gender, like male or female, or yes or no type of answer, or binary system 0 and 1. So that type of data is nominal. Ordinal is it's like a score. It's a disease severity. I mean, mild, moderate, severe. In numerical, discrete data is, these are the scores. Pain score, for example, how painful it is on a score of 1 to 10. And continuous is actual, what we all know, like glucose levels. That's a form of continuous data. So that's basic about data. Now, what is science? I mean, I'm sure we all know what science is. We all have science background, and it's defined as the observation, identification, description, experimental investigation, and theoretical explanation of natural phenomena. So we know science is knowledge, right? We learned what data is. So we have to put it together. So let's first look at the different paradigms of science. So thousands of years ago, science was empirical. Just so I can show you, if within few hundred years, it was theoretical, using some models and generalizations. And within last few decades, we went computational, including computational chemistry when we relate to our field. Right now, or since 2010, it's all about data exploration, right? It's data captured by instruments or generated by a simulator like this one, or processed by a software, information or knowledge that is being generated in computer. For example, in my company right now, Accelerite, a data science company, all 500 employees work on computer. Even if we went to office, everybody worked on computer. Because of that, during the lockdown, it's that much easier for everyone to continue working, and we are all fully functional right now. So the fourth fair paradigm is what we need to focus. So that's the data intensive scientific drug discovery. So data by itself is actually not that helpful. I mean, if I give you an Excel sheet with, let's say, 10,000 data points in it, what will you do with it? You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It is almost meaningless, actually. Maybe we can see the trends. That's about it. So data by itself is not that helpful, but we need to know within the data, the who, the what, the where, how many. So when we know that, what happens is we get information out of it, right? When we get information, we can generate knowledge out of it. So from data, we are leading to information, and from that, we are getting knowledge. And from that, we are deriving the wisdom. So that is the ultimate point, to use data. And that's what data science actually enables us to do it. So as you can see, the understanding is marked here. Basically, from knowledge, when we are deriving wisdom, that is where we develop the understanding. And the combination of these is real world decision making. That is what helps us make decision and helps research go forward. So now that we have seen what is data, what is science, to put it together, what is data science? I mean, to be honest, data science is nothing new as such. It's a new name where things are put together. We have been doing these things for many years. Excuse me. Again, data science is use of theoretical, mathematical, computational methods and tools to study, evaluate data to extract valuable knowledge and information from it. This is the bookish definition of data science. Data science has been used or is being used in many different industries for several years, in aviation industry or in finance industry, in stock market, right? I feel that we are not as advanced as we should have been, although we are getting there now. We are probably one of the last entrants. We, as in the pharma industry, is probably one of the last entrants to get there. So data science is at the center of this triage of domain knowledge. Of course, you need to have domain knowledge, otherwise it's meaningless, right? Then the mathematical and statistical aptitude and the computer science. So at the basically at the center of this triage sits the data science. Why we need domain knowledge? Because we need to understand client requirement. I work for a CRO type of company, so we need to understand what we have to help the client with. Again, highlighting the important criteria, what is important, what is not important, what should be given priority, etc. Statistical knowledge, mathematics, to be able to process that data, right? I mean, we get the data, but like I mentioned earlier, whether it is simple curve, simple graphs, or complex mathematical modeling. And the computer science, again, because we need the infrastructure, we need the supercomputer to be able to process all this data and not crash. So this is combination of these three fields, and the center of it is data science. Okay. So we need to look at what data is telling us, right? That is analytics, and they go hand in hand. So for example, here it's relevant to a business intelligence. What you see here on x-axis is the complexity, it goes on increasing. On y-axis, the value of the information. So the basic information or the analytics is descriptive. So for example, if we take an example of a shop, let's say, or a business, so then what is happening to my business is the basic information we need. If you go beyond that, which is a little more complex, but it also adds value, is why is it happening? That is the diagnostic part of it. Then further ahead is the predictive, right? What is likely to happen? So for example, if you're a shopkeeper and if there is some festival coming, then you know that maybe certain items will be required in higher quantity. Same thing with drug development. You know, for example, if it's a malaria season, we know that we'll need more medicines for malaria. Prescriptive is again to put all of this together and what I need to do. How can I prepare better to deal with the situation? And again, this is the analytics portion of data science that will help you prepare for that situation. How it evolved over the years, right? In 1980s, there used to be only report about what happened, and that was good enough, and all users would have it. In 90s, it further improved based on our abilities to understand and process the data, and now we started looking at why did it happen. So that's the analysis part. Then that warranted monitoring, right? What is happening and then how it would affect these things, and the prediction similar to that, but more in terms of evolution with the timeline and the business value it is adding from low to high. I don't remember how old this is, but as you can see in 2020 they left it blank, maybe because they knew it's the year of stay at home and work from home. So part of data science is artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I will not go in detail because last week, Dr. Raghu has covered the AI and ML in detail. detail, but I just want to tell you that AI and ML is very much in use and quite helping the drug development already. He has already mentioned that AI is the wide field, and within that, machine learning and ANN on artificial neural network is part of machine learning, and deep neural networks or deep learning is part of that, where it is basically the idea is to mimic thinking like a human brain. So now we looked at data science and what it encompasses. So let's look at the applications of data science. Dr. Pete, when I look at the screen like this, do you also see the right-hand side, these videos?
Yeah, you can minimize them.
Okay, do you see them right now? It's
I
blocking
think,
the slide?
no, maybe you can drag it a little bit to the corner, but then it's fine. It's not blocking.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can hide it completely, no
Yeah,
problem.
the slide is clear.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Puli. So the various applications of data science, as I mentioned, it's across various different industries. Actually, it's a huge field, vast field, from astrophysics, banking to finance, cybersecurity, business analytics, transportation, many. I mean, I can't imagine a sector where data science is not being used. Of course, we can't go through all of them, so we'll focus on some healthcare applications. So within healthcare, pharmaceutical R&D, so many of you may know cheminformatics and omics like genomics, proteomics data, pharmacology data, then clinical data, the electronic health records that are filled at clinical trial sites for patients by the medical workers, the administrative data for the insurance claims and etc., patient behavioral data. So again, these are various types of data that are being collected, that are being used in healthcare. So again, these slides are made for interactive session with students or live audience. So evolution of a data scientist. So we all know evolution of a humankind, right? This is the evolution of data scientist actually. Now, what is drug development? I'm sure many of you already know that, but I was informed by Dr. Puli that many of these will be students in BPharm or MPharm. So I thought I'll briefly cover the story of drug development. The medicine we consume, it takes 10 to 15 years for a molecule to become a medicine. And that's why, we call it drug, but once it is approved, then only it becomes a medicine. It takes 10 to 15 years. It takes $1 to $2 billion. It goes through many different phases during these 15 years. For example, first 3 to 6 years, it could be a basic research and drug discovery, meaning idea, conceptualization, making a compound in the lab, synthesis, and all of that. Once it goes through some basic filtration, then it can be tested into cell culture. And after that, it can be tested into animals. And that's the preclinical or translational phase. Of course, it requires more money than this stage. Once some of the compounds from this phase, if they are safe to consume, not toxic, and also if they are hitting certain targets that are of interest, it will move to the clinical drug development. Within clinical, again, it may take 6 to 8 years, and the phase 1 clinical trials are usually in healthy volunteers. In oncology, even the phase 1 trials are in cancer patients. If they are proven to be safe, which is the main criteria in phase 1, they will move to phase 2, where then they are tested into some patients, as well as some during these phases. The dose determination is also in process. So single ascending dose, multiple ascending dose, these studies are being conducted. If they are proven safe and effective, then it will go to phase 3, which is at a wider scale. As you can see at the bottom here, in phase 1, 20 to 50 volunteers, in phase 2, 100 to 500 volunteers, but phase 3 is actually 1,000 to 10,000 or even more, depending on the indication. It could be less also depending on indication, again in oncology or rare condition, but in cardiac diseases, it could be tens of thousands. Once all this data is collected and processed, Then we prepare a dossier and we submit it to FDA or the relevant health authority for approval. They may take sometimes from 6 months to 2 years, and if they may approve, they may reject, or they may call for discussion. Depending on that, it may go back to doing some more studies or it may get rejected. Once the approval is done, I mean, back in the days, that used to be end of story, that, hey, you got drug approved, fantastic, enjoy the benefits. Not anymore. Actually, nowadays, there are PMR post-marketing requirements or PMC post-marketing commitments. And the real world evidence is nothing but follow-up of this drug in the market now. So in real world, what is happening, collect that data. And that is also being processed as in form of health economics outcome research, in form of value evidence. So it's continuous process now. That's why it takes 10 to 15 years and up to 2 billion. Just to put it in perspective, actually, it's pretty complex and expensive process. The success rate in this example for FDA approved drugs since 93 to 2018 is less than 10%. In fact, for Alzheimer's drug from 2002 to 2012 data was analyzed, and less than 0.5% of drugs were approved. So more than 99.5% failure. Same thing in terms of expenses, billions of dollars are required. And only 2 out of 10 drugs revenue actually exceeds the expenditure. I mean, remember, we need to also generate revenue to continue the R&D and to be able to come up with new drugs. You might have seen another slide where 10,000 compounds start the journey from the chemistry lab. And out of those 10,000, maybe 1,000 make it to preclinical lab testing in animals. And out of 1,000, maybe only 100 make it to clinical studies. And out of 100, 10 make it to the phase 3. And out of that, 1 gets approved. So from 10,000 to 1. So that 1 that is approved will generate revenue, of course, but who is paying for the 9,999 drugs, the researchers, and all the expenses that go into it? So that's why the revenue has to exceed the expenditure. Why I'm showing you all of this is we are not going through all this data, but the point I want to make is if we can use data science more effectively, and if we can increase the success rate or decrease the failure rate, if we can decrease the expenses by specifically targeting certain ligands or the targets, that's a win-win situation. Lesser amount of, lesser amount of money required to make a drug will help patient get it cheaper. Sooner the drug becomes available will help patients get it faster. And ultimately, that's the end of the, that's the ultimate goal for all of us in this industry, right? So now, having said that, these are the paradigms of drug development. Again, back in the days, it was empirical. Penicillin was discovered serendipitously, as all of we know. Later, it became a little more rational by designing molecules to target certain target proteins or ligands. Computational drug discovery came in picture in those decades. Then the big experiments started in 90s and 2000, and 2010 onwards is the big data use of informatics and accepting that body is amazingly complex, and we probably don't understand it well. Even to understand and accept it, it took us decades, if not centuries, because we thought we know human body pretty well and we can treat any ailment. Well, finally we admitted that it may not be as simple, as easy as we thought. And then we realized that everything is connected, meaning it's not just one target or one organ or one tissue. We have to take into account and the entire homeostasis. So big data, you might have heard this term in different contexts. So let's look at pharma big data. What it means is big data is nothing but the volume, the velocity, and variety. So pertaining to pharma, there is a huge volume of data available. I mean, millions of compounds, millions of substances, and their related information. The velocity is also pretty high, especially if you look at 2008, 9, the substance compound, the number of records are increasing almost exponentially. and the variety. So there is a lot of unstructured data, right? There is so the idea is to convert this unstructured data into structured data. And if you remember the previous pyramid, I mean, remember that only data is not very meaningful unless we draw some knowledge and information and wisdom out of it. So to connect with our field, let's briefly look at pharmacology. And some of you might know pharmacology very well. Some of you might be starting and going to study very soon. So pharmacology itself is, as you can see, is connected to many different disciplines, as you see in the gold. And these disciplines
Absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion.
Excuse me?
I think they have to mute their mics. I request Santosh sir to mute the mics of the participants.
Yeah, we'll take care of that, sir.
Oh, okay, no problem. I thought there is a question, so I'll take a pause. So anyway, so these domains in themselves are disciplines. For example, pharmacology is connected to pharmacogenetics, but genetics in itself is a big discipline. Same thing, genomics, epidemiology, economics, clinical medicine, but this is linked to pharmacology via clinical pharmacology. Why this is important? Unless we understand and put all these pieces together, we may not be successful in achieving our goals. Particularly for I'm a pharmacokineticist, this is close to my heart. And pharmacokinetics, the simplest definition is what the body does to the drug. When we take a pill, it gets excreted within 12 to 24 hours, most likely, right? So it is traveling through the body, and whatever body does to the drug, that is the pharmacokinetics. Now, drug while going through the body is not going to go quietly, right? Drug is also going to do something to the body. That is pharmacodynamics, what a drug does to the body. So the examples or the components of pharmacokinetics are ADME, absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, etc. Pharmacodynamics is effect or response via various organs or measuring receptors or biomarkers to see the pharmacodynamic effect. The ADME or the PK, absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, these are the organs like mostly liver and kidney are the primary organs where it gets metabolized or excreted. But the absorption happens through gut, and then the intestine, it gets distributed to various organs and it gets eliminated via bile or kidney or metabolized in liver. This is a simple PK profile, concentration versus time. And what it shows is a drug is taken here, either this is extravascular administration, meaning oral or topical, where at time 0, there is no drug in the body. But as the time passes, the drug will get absorbed slowly, and then it will distribute and it will start elimination, right? The time it takes to eliminate half of the drug from here to here is half-life. The maximum concentration is Cmax. The time where it occurs is Tmax. The area under curve helps us determine the response. Again, this is a vast field. If you are interested, I suggest you to take up more reading. But this is brief description of pharmacology and ADME processes. So we learn data, we learn science, we learn pharmacology. Now let's solve this problem by using the big data, which none of us have any slightest idea what to do with, right? You don't want to be that guy in the room. Absolutely no. Either we are in the wrong room or wrong field. So that's why I put this cartoon. Let's look at the applications. So the applications of data science and analytics in drug development. I mean, once again, this is a schematic view of drug development. Again, these 15 years where 2 to 3 years drug discovery, lead identification, lead optimization, ADME talks, clinical development, post-approval. There is no fixed timeline, and that is why somewhere you will see 5 to 6 years, somewhere you will see 6 to 8 years, and they're all right because certain drugs get approved in 10 years and some even may take 16 years. So these are the in brief processes that happen during drug development. And this is from the Nature article, where it is highlighted that what are the different things where data science can be used. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I picked one example, in vivo pharmacokinetics, again relevant to what we do or what we did. So here the goal is predicting human clearance a priori. A priori meaning before the study in humans. Now, this can be done, this is commonly done in pharma industry based on the animal studies, based on the solubility and permeability data. Before even you enter the drug in human, you want to be in a position to predict what might be the clearance. Based on the clearance, it will help you determine what should be the starting dose. Again, many different factors go in that, including safety as one of the main criteria. So the physiological parameters you need to consider is body weight, brain weight, which will help you these various different extrapolation methods. And depends on the drug, depends on the therapeutic area, which method is more suitable than the other. None of them are perfect, but definitely helpful to guide. In this particular example, the objective was to develop a machine learning algorithm for interspecies scaling, where the clearance data was available for many different small molecules and predict what might happen in humans. So the input was clearance data, again from these animal species, rats, dogs, monkeys, and humans data, of course, because unless you have humans data, how will you verify it, right? So when you build a model, you also need to verify and validate, and then only you can fine tune, and then you can test the model by leave one out, meaning if there are 143 drugs, you develop a model for all 143, but then you use data for only 142, and for the 143rd you try to estimate and see if the values are matching. That only will give confidence that yes, the model is predicting within 2-fold or within 5-fold or within 10-fold. So that's why it's important to have initially human data to be able to predict and use it. The descriptors, molecular descriptors, are used here from the physicochemical properties of the drugs. The model was trained using 122 drugs, and 21 drugs were used to build an external test. Just like I said one, likewise you can use as the confidence goes on increasing in the model. In this case, 21 drugs were used. So these are the results. I mean, again, I don't want to go through the detail. The references at the bottom of the slide. You can go later based on your interest and considering the wide audience from first year to veteran faculties. I just want to show some of the graphics where particularly in the middle here, we see predicted human clearance and observed human clearance because we had the human data, right, for those 21 drugs. So this is the line of unity. And as you can see, this particular model predicted the clearance reasonably well, except for a few compounds that are outside this 90% confidence interval. It was also done using individual species like rat, dogs, and monkeys, and all animals, but few compounds, because sometimes you also need to find out what species may be more appropriate. So this is complex computational modeling where a lot of data was used from physicochemical properties as well as clearance data from different animal species and humans, and prediction was done, and that can be used to predict clearance for other drugs that are not part of the 143. So that gives us a guidance to reduce either number of animals or number of studies that to be done. So that way it helps progress faster as well as reduce the expenses. Another example is in drug repurposing. And you maybe relate to, I mean, most of you maybe relate to this example closely than the previous one, because that is more specific. What is drug repurposing? It is identification of new targets for FDA approved drugs, or even for failed compounds actually. Like I mentioned, in phase 3 also 9 out of 10 compound may fail, or in clinical development phase 2 phase 3 many compounds fail. If you have made that far, that means they have certain qualities that may be helpful. Maybe the indication is wrong. So how do you use those drugs for different target or different disease areas? So this is a general schematic of how we go about it. You identify a target of interest. You have to build the models, and then based on that, you screen these FDA drugs or marketed drugs which are already approved. Since they are already approved, that means they are safe to consume, right? So it reduces the time in terms of evaluating the safety of the drug. Of course, you have to try it within the approved dose. If you want to go beyond that, then you might have to try and test that extra dose in the clinical trial. So then you find hits, meaning now this approved drug, which particular mechanism of action it will be helpful to target any new target. Uh, then
Hello.
if they can mute, or if you can mute them, Dr.
I
Suraj.
request Dr. Santosh, please mute the participant's mic, please.
Yeah. It is done, sir. It is done. Only Suraj sir will be online. Suraj sir, please.
Thank you, Santosh sir. Yes. And when we go through the process, this is a computer exercise. Basically, we get data for the approved drugs, the names, their solubility, permeability, their target, their affinity, so on and so forth. We will get the EC50 and other relevant values from the labs, and we will identify the targets, or there will be a database of target or ligands where you need to find commonalities. And based on that, a new indication can be proposed. Again, the testing is necessary. It is not by default that you have identified and it's given. Since we are all on mute, so I will not keep it interactive, but I wanted to ask you, you can think in your head, if you know any drugs that follow this process. And I'm sure many of you might know. Actually, the answer is here: Mintop, minoxidil. Actually, it was an anti-ulcer drug, not very good or not very effective. It went to become an anti-hypertensive drug because of the vasodilator properties. There also, it didn't gain much fame, but then it's effectively used for hair loss. Actually, that was a side effect. Hirsutism was a side effect that was observed in some of these trials for the blood pressure, and that drug later got approved for hair loss. Another example that many may know is Viagra, or sildenafil citrate. Again, this drug was being developed as a blood pressure drug or vasodilator, where it wasn't very effective. But in the process, the side effect that was observed was later converted into effect and approved for erectile dysfunction. So Viagra is actually a blockbuster drug from Pfizer, or one of the earlier blockbusters after Lipitor, I think. So these are examples of drug repurposing that became possible because of reprocessing of data from these thousands of patients, or hundreds of trials, or thousands of experiments conducted in labs. When you put all this together and try to do something new with this is the result. Mintop and Viagra are repurposed. For the current situation, actually, we at Accelera have created a database for COVID-19, and I think we have about 100 drugs in this database. This is freely available to anyone who wants to play with it. I just took a snapshot from our LinkedIn page. Go to Accelera's LinkedIn or my LinkedIn page, and you will find a link where actually, if you click Access Database, you can sign up for the first time, and you can use it, and you can play with this data where we have identified some drugs where we think may be useful, and we have made it public because if it helps pharma companies or other researchers to expedite the process, that would be really fantastic. So that's the last example I had, just to put it together: data science and analytics, other applications in drug development. So this color coding is for preclinical, clinical, pre-launch, and post-launch. So data science and analytics sits in the center of all these things. Actually, there is a drug, there is a disease, there is a target population, there is effectiveness, there is a stakeholder perspective also, because as you can imagine, most of the pharma companies are public limited, where there are investors. So you have to also see the risk benefit ratio in terms of development cost. If it takes 2 billions to develop a drug, eventually it should also pay out for itself. Otherwise, everybody will go bankrupt. So all these factors need to be considered while using data science and analytics, and all these activities at different stage of drug development can be done, right? Whether it is clinical trial analytics, whether it is market forecasting, competitive intelligence, SAR or structure activity relationship, so on and so forth. So in summary, I just want to say data science and analytics are here to stay. It is much more mature discipline than it was few years ago, but it still has a lot more scope to grow as well as to stabilize. Bioinformatics is also on the rise, and that will also continue to do so. What we can do is we can leverage the insights from the data to the real world problems, and we can try to enhance the quality, we can try to enhance or increase the efficiency and minimize the errors. I mean, pharma or drug industry is like aviation industry, zero error industry actually. Like in flights, you cannot make even a smallest error that will lead to loss of many lives. Same thing here in pharma industry. When we are developing a drug, if we are putting it in hands of patients or doctors, it should not lead to any deaths, and that's why I call it a zero error industry actually. So we can optimize algorithms to predict better and analyze and interpret cautiously. So data science is there to help you, not to substitute us. End of the day, we have to use our knowledge, experience, expertise, and use it effectively but cautiously. That is, I think, the last slide. The good thing is there is a rise of data scientists. So back in the days, if somebody was good in math, they were termed math geek actually, and people would avoid them at parties. But now with data science, people love data scientists actually. It's basically old wine in a new bottle, but in a much better way, much sophisticated and formulated way. With that, I want to thank again NMIMS and all the audience for your patience and for listening me for this opportunity. I will be happy to take some questions. I think we have 10 minutes.
Hello, Dr. Pete, it's over to you.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Pete, I can hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Suraj. It was lucid presentation, and like first time our audience was hearing about the data science. Might be few of them like they are working in data science, or but then believe it on me, like most of they are from pharma background, and our Zoom meeting was full. At the same time, our YouTube more than 3,000. Already I told you that it was a huge number, huge success as far as your presentation is concerned. And I got a few questions on a chart. Right now there are more than 2,000 and 2010 participants are there who are there on the YouTube actively chatting with us.
Wow.
I'm taking care of both the things like Zoom as well as the YouTube. So few questions, I can take few questions. Remaining question, maybe we can later on we can take all those questions, or I will request you to send emails to you.
Sure.
So here, first question from Mr. Praveen: can we combine machine learning drug development with QBD and PAT?
QBD and
PAT,
what is PAT here?
process analytical techniques.
Ah, okay, okay. Well, can we combine? I mean, to some extent, it's already being combined, right? Especially machine learning and QBD. I mean, machine learning is just a tool to get some activity done, right? So based on the data and expertise, it's already being done to some extent. Can it evolve more? Yes, absolutely. There is scope to evolve more.
Thank you, sir. One more question. How strong is the in silico in vivo correlation of the predicted values?
Yeah, that question almost always comes actually. So I mean, one simple rule about IVIVC or modeling is garbage in, garbage out, meaning your prediction is only as good as the data you feed into it, right? In many cases, it is pretty good actually. It depends on the variability of data, it depends on the volume of data, it depends on number of compounds, so on and so forth. But when I was working at Novartis, I worked pretty closely with preclinical colleagues also, and the IVIVC was pretty good for many compounds. It depends on quality of data and quantity of data.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Suraj. One very interesting question, and this question has been asked by so many students, that which computer language they need to study in order to get some insight of the data science.
Yeah, that's a good question actually, and it's one of my new favorites. I mean, people ask me what should I do, and I always tell them learn a language because these days there is a lot of saturation in each expertise. Just being a pharmacist is not good enough anymore. So for data science, primarily two languages are very important: R and Python. So if you can learn one of those two, that will be really good. In fact, if you learn one, the other will not be too difficult. The good thing about R is it is free source. And few years ago, free source languages or free source resources were not acceptable, not appreciated because of the validation issues. Not anymore, actually. Even the health authorities are embracing R, although it's a free source. And there are many videos on YouTube. There are courses on Coursera or similar platforms. So learn R or learn Python, which is absolutely must for if you want to be a data scientist. If you have access to SAS, of course, that is also good to learn. But SAS is expensive. SAS courses are expensive. So it's your choice. But I would say R and Python.
Sir, for students, can you suggest any free website to learn Python or R language?
Well, if they Google R or how to learn R, they'll find many resources. There are YouTube videos on how to learn R. Even if you go to the R Studio website, they have many resources actually. R Studio is the website, and they have very helpful tips there.
Sir, my chat box is full with questions, but maybe like we can take few questions. One very interesting question is there from Professor Nagarajan from JSS University, and he is saying that we are talking about data science, but still we have problem with data integrity.
I mean, what can I say? That question belongs to ethics class. But yes, I mean, that's a challenge, and that's something, it goes with the personal integrity. The personal integrity is affecting the data integrity. So people have to take things seriously, then only these things will improve.
Sir, one more question I would like to take, and this question is related to COVID-19 situation. I think Ms. Manaswini asked that question, that how data science is being used to understand the COVID-19 situation.
So again, like I showed you this example about the database we built, many companies are doing many different things actually. COVID-19 is a coronavirus, and there is information about drugs being tested or were tested in coronavirus. SARS was a coronavirus, right? So the target may not be exact same, but at the same time, it's in the neighborhood, it's in the same family. So because of that, a lot of data is available there, and people are trying to see if that can be of any use. Even for the COVID-19 itself, clinical trials are already in progress, and some data is already out there. You might have heard last week remdesivir trial from
Yes.
Gilead.
Yes.
They had phase 2 data already analyzed and discussed and published. So again, data science is, like I said, it's a tool to gather the information and process it, analyze it, and make sense out of it. So that is already being done on the drug development side. I'm sure news channels are also making use of data science in terms of number of cases and spreadability. You might have heard in the initial days the R0 value. R0 is very high for this virus. What it means is how many people that it can spread to. So likewise, data science is in the middle of all the coronavirus spreading, or to efforts being made to curb it or to find a cure.
Sir, I think we'll take one more question if you permit me.
Sure, no problem.
Any open source database of targets in which we can have well classified targets?
Well, if you want everything well, then you have to pay for it. There are many databases, but remember, many of the companies are paying for these things, right? So even we build databases, but our clients are paying for that. So if you go to PubMed or NIH, National Institute of Health, you will find many resources. Absolutely, FDA, NIH. I mean, these websites, you will find many different resources. I cannot point to one that you can go to, because it will also depend on. I don't know whoever is asking. It depends on what is their target, what is the indication. So based on that, I think. They'll have to find it through NIH or FDA or PubMed. So.
Dr. Anil, can I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
Dr. Suraj, that was a wonderful presentation. I got this attention of this about this Alzheimer's, where it says that 99.6% failure rate is there. So I was wondering that are there any tools available with data science which can actually say whether the data already existing is biased? So are there any, is data science immune from the bias, the way the data has been collected or the way the target has been treated all these decades?
Is there a ready-made tool? I mean, I don't think so.
Not a ready-made, but there is a way this data science bias in the data can be, I mean, it can be sorted out.
I mean, I don't know if there is a bias or not, but can we explore that data more to see if people were missing the target all along? Absolutely, that can be done. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is Dr. Santosh. Hello.
Yes, Santosh, I can hear you.
Sir, I have one minor query in favor of student fraternity. Is there any such institute where a student can get at least short-term training programs in data sciences? Is there any kind of availability nearby?
I think there are many actually. I mean, I haven't personally evaluated. There are many. So, I don't want to recommend one or the other, but just make sure that it's a reputed institute because they promise jobs and teaching everything in 3 months. I want to tell you one thing is you will not be expert in 3 months. So absolutely don't buy into any of these false promises. You should be better than that. But yeah, if it can get a primer for you to start learning something, then you can build on your own. Actually, there are many different institutes in Hyderabad. I know I live in Hyderabad, and in Pune, where I have many links actually. So
Okay, thank you, sir.
Even we at NMIMS started MSc in data analytics at Hyderabad campus.
that's good to know.
So thank you very much, Suraj sir. There are so many questions, and as I told you that our audience has crossed the figure of 3,000, and I think as far as chart is concerned, I'm having that data with me. Like it is already available on YouTube. The link, this recording will put on the YouTube. It will be available for all the audience. I just want to answer few questions which are asked by the audience, that what about the certificate? So obviously we are not going to give the certificates as such. Those who are the registered participants will be sending the link for the quiz, and those participants who are qualifying the exam, that we are asking few questions, only those participants will be getting the certificate. But that quiz will be open on 11, and we will be closing that quiz on 30th of May. And after that, the certification distribution will be there till 16th of May. So please bear with us. The number is too much, but then again, we are taking the help of technology and we are trying to do that. One more important announcement that I would like to make. This is regarding the third webinar. Tomorrow we have next session by Dr. Rama Shivasubramaniam. She is Associate Director with the Novartis, and her topic is pediatric drug development. Again, very interesting topic. So I request all the participants, please log in with the same ID, or otherwise we'll send, Dr. Lakshman Puli will send the notification regarding the same. So at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Suraj Bansali for sparing his valuable time with us. I must thank NMIMS University authorities, my management, our Chancellor, Pro Vice Chancellor, Campus Director, our Dean, Dr. Bala Prabhakar from Mumbai campus, our Director, Pharma Education, Dr. R.S. Gaud, and my team at NMIMS Hyderabad, especially Dr. Santosh Ele, Dr. Lakshman Puli, Dr. Kapil Kumar, Dr. Rahul Maheshwari, for their support. Though, like you can see, we are working from different places, but then we are working as one team, and because of my team only this was possible. So thank you, team. And last but not least, I'm very much thankful to all the audience. Like more than 3,000 people are live with us. So thank you very much. We'll try to bring the best from the industry, and this is our Pharma Talk web series. We'll continue this. So be safe wherever you are. Take care of yourself as well as your family member. So thank you very much once again. Thank you, Dr. Suraj, for your valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. And if I may suggest, Dr. Pete,
Yes,
for
sir.
the remaining questions, if you want to use data science and maybe categorize them into few categories and combine, because many will be repeat or similar, maybe send it over email to me, and I can take a crack if it's still relevant. So see if,
Yeah, thank you for reminding this. Like we thought we will collect those questions, we'll send those questions to you, and we'll try to answer all those participants. But then
yeah, just combine the similar ones so that way you can pull them together. Other than that, thank you very much for all the audience and you, Dr. Pete, and NMIMS Institute for the opportunity. This may be my first time reaching out to 3,000 people at once, so appreciate everybody's attention. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
This first time, like we are live for more than 3,000 people. Yeah. So thank you very much. It's the popularity of data science, I guess.
Yes. I'll go back to my boat now. It's waiting for me. So bye.
Yeah. Continue your vacation.
It's just a screensaver.
Yeah, I know. All right. Thank you, Dr. Suraj.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks all once again. Yep.
We are closing this meeting here.
Yes.
Thanks once again. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks. Sure.
Bye.
Bye.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.